Now imagine waking up one morning to discover that the system has been robbing you blind the whole time. What would you do? Walk away quietly or fight back? You've spent your entire life doing everything right, working hard, paying your bills, raising your family, and trusting the system. That's exactly the question 3 ordinary old men are forced to answer in this film. And trust me, the answer they choose will absolutely blow your mind. At the beginning of the movie, we are introduced to Joe Harding, a grandfather living a modest life alongside his daughter and young granddaughter. From the outside, Joe looks like your average retired man, calm, stable, just trying to enjoy his golden years. But then one day, Joe walks into his bank holding a letter that changes everything. It's a foreclosure notice, and Joe, understandably confused, sits down with the bank manager to find out what on earth is going on. Here's where it gets infuriating. The manager calmly explains that the promotional interest rate Joe had been enjoying on his mortgage has officially expired, and his monthly payments have tripled, just like that. No warning, no real explanation. And when Joe reminds him that he was told the rate increase was highly unlikely, the manager basically shrugs it off. Think about that for a second. This man trusted the bank. He signed their documents. He played by the rules. And now, at this stage of his life, the very institution he trusted is about to take his home away. But before the conversation can go any further, something completely unexpected happens. 3 masked robbers burst through the front doors of the bank. These aren't your typical criminals, though. They're calm, organized, almost theatrical. They announce themselves and instruct everyone to get on their backs, raise their arms and legs, and freeze. In what they describe as a cat pose, the bank manager, already on the ground, starts whining. One of the robbers quickly shuts him up. Then something remarkable happens. Joe, an elderly man with cramped muscles, tells one of the robbers he physically cannot hold the position. The robber, rather than threatening him, actually lets Joe sit up. And when Joe hands the robber his foreclosure notice, almost as a reflex, the robber reads it, sympathizes, and turns on the manager. He takes the manager's wallet right in front of him, hands it to Joe, and tells him it's not much, but it belongs to him now. Joe notices something important during this interaction, a distinctive tattoo on the robber's neck. The robbers vanish as quickly as they appeared, and the bank is left in stunned silence. When the police arrive and the FBI begins collecting statements, Joe steps up and does something the agents aren't expecting. He suggests that investigators trace the tattoo to the artist who created it. It's a sharp, practical idea. But the FBI agent on the case brushes it off with barely concealed amusement. What does a senior citizen know about tracking down bank robbers? But that evening, Joe is watching the news at home when he sees something that makes him sit up straight. That same agent, the one who laughed at his idea, is now on national television, repeating Joe's exact suggestion word for word, even describing a sketch of the tattoo to the public. So his idea was smart enough to steal, just not smart enough to credit him for. Joe's daughter Rachel and granddaughter Brooklyn had picked him up from the police station earlier. Brooklyn, young and full of curiosity, peppered her grandfather with excited questions the whole drive home. Rachel, understandably, was far less thrilled about any of it. The next day, Joe meets up with his 2 closest friends in the world, Willie Davis and Albert Garner, for their regular game of dominoes. The 3 men have been thick as thieves for decades, though as it turns out, they're about to become something closer to that than any of them planned. While catching up on the bank robbery, each man reveals they've received an identical letter. The factory where all 3 of them spent their working lives is shutting down, relocating production overseas, and, here's the gut punch, the pension fund they were relying on for retirement is being terminated entirely. Decades of loyal service, gone. That evening, sitting around a diner table, the 3 try to figure out their next move. Joe suggests legal action. Willie, ever the realist, reminds him that at their age, they'd probably be dead before the courts ever reached a verdict. And when Joe arrives home, there's another letter waiting for him. This one with a red border. His house will be seized within a month. Meanwhile, Willie has his own crisis quietly building in the background. At a routine medical appointment, he learns the devastating news. His kidneys are failing, and he needs a transplant urgently. Because of his age and insurance situation, he's been placed at the very bottom of the donor waiting list. His chances of survival without a miracle are almost non-existent. And yet, When Willie Video calls his daughter and granddaughter shortly after, he doesn't breathe a word of it. He just smiles and waves at the camera like everything is fine. There's something heartbreaking about that moment. A man carrying what might be a death sentence, choosing to protect the people he loves from the weight of it. Albert, meanwhile, is giving saxophone lessons to a teenager who clearly has no passion for the instrument. The kid hates it. Albert, never one to sugarcoat things, tells him to stop torturing himself and the saxophone. On his way out, he runs into the boy's grandmother, Annie, who flirts shamelessly with him and mentions she saw him perform with jazz legend Stan Getz back in 1977. Albert, ever grumpy and guarded, isn't interested. That evening, the trio gathers to celebrate Willie's birthday. The mood is warm, nostalgic. Joe and Albert give Willie a wristwatch engraved with a photo of his beloved granddaughter. He puts it on immediately and doesn't take his eyes off it. Then, out of nowhere, Joe drops a bombshell. He tells them he's been thinking about robbing a bank. There's laughter naturally. The idea sounds absurd. 3 retired men in their 70s attempting a bank heist. But Joe isn't smiling. He lays out the bank notices on the table and walks them through the brutal arithmetic of their situation. The banks have destroyed millions of lives, he says, and faced 0 consequences. At their age, in prison, at least they'd have a bed, 3 meals a day, and better health care than what they're currently getting. And if they pulled it off, they'd reclaim what was stolen from them. The friends go home and think it over. Willie calls back and says he's in. Albert refuses at first, but the men need practice, so they decide to test their abilities with a small-scale rehearsal, stealing groceries from the local supermarket. What follows is arguably the funniest and most disastrous dry run in the history of crime. Willie and Joe leave Albert in the getaway car. Albert, unable to help himself, wanders in anyway. And of course, he immediately bumps into Annie, who helps him pick out items while flirting openly. Albert continues to insist he's not interested. Meanwhile, Joe and Willie are drawing the attention of security. As they try to quietly slip out, they realize Albert, their driver, has abandoned his post. Chaos erupts. Joe commandeers an electric mobility scooter. Willie dives into a shopping cart. Flour bags are weaponized as a makeshift smokescreen, and yet they're still caught. Even Albert gets detained, even though he didn't actually steal anything. He just panicked and ran when the guard chased him. The store manager, looking at these 3 elderly men, simply shakes his head, forgives them, hands them discount coupons, and asks, politely but firmly, that if they feel the need to steal again, they do it somewhere else. Albert is furious. He calls them completely hopeless criminals. And as he drives away without them, Willie sighs and admits Albert is probably right. Joe decides they need guidance from someone who actually knows what they're doing. Through his former son-in-law, the men are connected to Jesus, and a pet shop owner by day, career criminal by specialty. Jesus doesn't sugarcoat the risks. Bank robbery can mean a life sentence. But Joe lays out his situation with a raw, unflinching honesty that leaves even this hardened man impressed. I have nothing left to lose, Joe tells him. Jesus agrees to help for 25% of the take. But then comes the final push that turns Albert from reluctant skeptic to fully committed co-conspirator. While reading the morning paper, Willie discovers something that makes his blood run cold. The pension funds from their factory are being seized and held by the very same bank that is about to repossess Joe's home. The same bank. That bank has been stealing from all 3 of them. Albert looks at the headline, then at his friends, and without another word of protest, he's in. What follows is a genuinely entertaining training montage. 3 septuagenarians start working out to improve their fitness, scouting the bank's camera locations, arranging a solid alibi through volunteer work at a charity fair, and practicing at a shooting range. Though Jesus makes one thing absolutely crystal clear. If the police show up during the robbery, they surrender. No heroics, no casualties. Joe, ever meticulous, brings his former son-in-law home the morning of the job and patiently teaches him how to make breakfast, just in case Joe ends up incarcerated and isn't around to care for his family anymore. He pulls Brooklyn close for a long, quiet hug before she heads off to school. He arranges for her father to pick her up that afternoon, and Brooklyn, sensing something unspoken, promises her grandfather she'll give her dad a real chance. Joe nods. Then he goes to rob a bank. The alibi is set. The 3 men quietly slip away from the charity fair, change into their gear, and drive to the bank in a stolen van. Each man pulls on a mask: Frank Sinatra, Dean Martin, and Sammy Davis Jr. The Rat Pack brought back to life in the most unexpected context imaginable. They enter the bank, lock the doors, and fire a shot into the air. The room freezes. While tellers load cash into bags, a little girl reaches out and offers one of the robbers her doll, convinced they'll take it too. Willie, moved by her innocence, crouches down and tries to calm her. He tells her about his own granddaughter, but then Willie collapses. The little girl trying to help him nearly pulls his mask off, and in doing so, she notices the wristwatch on his wrist, the one with his granddaughter's photo on the dial. In the chaos, a bank employee hits the alarm. The manager grabs a fallen security guard's weapon and threatens the trio. Joe stands his ground, and when the manager empties the entire magazine, missing every single shot, Joe raises his own gun and fires. The manager screams. Joe tells him the bullets are blanks. The robbers order everyone in the bank to count backwards from 90 to 1. By the time they reach 1, the van is long gone. Total haul, $2.3 million. That evening, while Albert plays saxophone on stage at a restaurant and the three celebrate with dinner and drinks, they feel something they haven't felt in a long time, like they actually won something. But trouble is circling closer than they know. The FBI agent begins piecing things together. Reviewing surveillance footage, he determines one of the robbers is black and likely no younger than 70. The bank manager, meanwhile, gives an interview insisting the robbers were young and agile, because admitting you were outmaneuvered by senior citizens is apparently too humiliating. Then the supermarket manager sees the news, reviews his own security footage, and connects the dots. Same height, same walk, same build. The FBI arrests Joe and Albert. Willie, hospitalized again, is interviewed separately. Here's where the preparation pays off. Each man gives the exact same alibi, individually, without conferring. They were at the charity fair. Joe was selling tickets. Willie was running the haunted house. Albert was in the restroom due to chronic intestinal trouble. All of it was captured on camera. After the robbery, Albert had melted the masks and prop guns in a factory furnace, re-entered through a back wall, and exited on camera exactly as he'd entered. Joe had taken a cab to Jesus, handed off the money for laundering, and returned to the fair. Willie had returned the stolen vehicle and got back in frame. Their alibi is airtight. The agent knows it and hates it. He tells them that every criminal makes one mistake eventually, and that's how they all fall. He takes Joe and Albert to the hospital to conduct a lineup. Willie and several elderly stand-ins are placed in wheelchairs and lined up in the gym. Then the little girl from the bank robbery is brought in. The room goes tense. She walks slowly past each man, studying, remembering. She stops. The agent kneels beside her, holding his breath. She shakes her head. "He's not here," she says. "I have a great memory. He's not here." She glances briefly at Willie, and she smiles. Sometime later, Joe is sitting in a diner when Jesus walks in, carrying a pet carrier with a small puppy inside. All the paperwork is in order, and when Joe asks about Jesus' cut, the man shakes his head. He says it's society's duty to care for the older generation. Joe pauses. That phrase, he's heard it before. He asks Jesus where his neck tattoo went. Jesus explains it was henna, drawn specifically to throw off the investigation. The bank robber from the opening scene. Jesus was one of them all along, and he'd been quietly steering events from the very beginning. The FBI agent walks in right at that moment, and Joe's heart nearly stops. But the agent only wants to return Joe's wallet from the evidence locker. He shakes hands with Jesus, compliments the puppy, and leaves without suspecting a thing. Under a napkin on the table, the waitress finds a stack of $100 bills, Joe's tip. A community center where the three friends spent years of their retirement receives an anonymous donation. And at the hospital, Willie undergoes his kidney transplant. The donor? Albert. His oldest friend, without hesitation, gave him a piece of himself so he could live. The film closes with Albert and Annie's wedding, a joyful, warm celebration, filled with family and friends. Willie's daughter and granddaughter are there. Brooklyn's father has finally come back into her life, just as Joe had hoped. And the three old friends stand together on a bridge overlooking the party. Albert shakes his head, baffled at how he ended up married after all these years of resistance. But then he stops. and he feels something he hasn't felt in a very long time, something that feels a lot like happiness. Joe reflects in voiceover that if you're lucky, or truly lucky, you find a handful of people in your life who'll go through everything with you. The laughter and the tears, the hardship and the joy. The absolutely insane decisions that somehow, against all odds, work out. Albert is that kind of friend. They all are. And that, my friends, is the full story of this incredible film. A movie that somehow manages to be funny, heartbreaking, tense, and deeply human all at once. It's a reminder that the people who've been most loyal to the system are often the ones the system forgets. And sometimes, the most righteous thing a person can do is refuse to go quietly. Now here's the thing. If you made it all the way to the end of this video and you're still not subscribed to this channel, I genuinely don't know what to tell you. Every week we break down movies exactly like this, full of twists, emotion, and moments that'll have you completely hooked. You've already invested your time watching this. Don't miss the next one. Hit that subscribe button right now. It literally takes 2 seconds and it costs you nothing. And drop a comment below. I want to know, would you rob a bank if the banks had been robbing you your whole life? Let's talk about it. I read every single comment. See you in the next one.